Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about our recent G Adventures trip, Essential Vietnam and Cambodia. So this trip was 17 days, but they were two separate trips combined. The first section is Classic Vietnam, Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City, and the second is Classic Cambodia Experience. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Vietnam trip, and in the second one, we're going to go over the Cambodia experience. We're going to be doing day by day, so follow along and let's get started. Arrival day is considered day one, so we made our own way to the G Adventures Hotel, where we were meeting with our group later that night. So later that night, around 6 p.m., we met with our whole group, and we had essentially a meeting type thing where our CEO went over the whole itinerary for that part of the trip. So of course it was like a little bit awkward at first, meeting everyone just because everyone's new, we don't know each other, and there was a wide range of ages. So it was a little weird at first, but luckily we went to a restaurant that night to get to know each other a little bit better and warm up with each other. Including our guide, there was 16 of us total, and that's the max size you can have on G Adventure trips. Compared to other day tours we've been on in different countries, 16 was actually pretty small. It was honestly a pretty good size. So once we arrived in Hanoi, we were able to get cash out just fine at really any ATM. Just make sure you have a Visa card or debit card to get the money out. So at the beginning of the trip, our CEO told us about putting all of our tips together into what is called a tipping kitty. And so essentially he pays the tips for us for like the bus drivers and everything. And it was $25 per person for those tips. So our first hotel was called the Chalcedony Hotel in Hanoi. And initially, the outside, it's pretty nice. It's a pretty nice hotel. For every hotel, I'm going to be doing pros and cons. So for the Chalcedony Hotel, the pro was the people were very accommodating. They took our suitcases to the room. It was a good size. The rooms are pretty good. The beds were pretty comfortable. The cons were probably the bathroom. It's a wet bath, which of course here in America, we're not very used to. So everything just kind of felt damp, which I didn't love. Other than that, the only other thing, it didn't feel super clean, but I mean, it was fine. We were only spending one night there. So overall, I think it was an okay hotel to stay at. So to wrap up the first day, the only thing we did is we had a little meeting and then went to dinner with our group in the evening, and that was it for day one. So day two started pretty early, I would say around 8 a.m. And this day we were going from Hanoi to Ha Long Bay. So for the transportation, it was a pretty big bus. It was like I think like a full-size bus. It was super nice. Our CEO told us to just bring a day pack because we're just doing one night in Ha Long Bay and to leave the rest of our luggage at the Chalcedony Hotel. The bus ride was about 4 hours, and halfway through, so about after 2 hours, we stopped. So this pit stop was a little bit weird. It was kind of like a gift shop, but they also had people making crafts and selling crafts there. They had a little introduction to the people who were making the crafts and why they were making them, and it felt kind of like they were trying to get you to buy the stuff there. But I mean, it was okay. They had a little cafe, they had some food there, and then we hopped on the bus and we made our way another 2 hours to Ha Long Bay. So we got to Ha Long Bay, and once we got off the bus, we brought all of our luggage with us and we got in a smaller little boat. And this is kind of where me and Javi realized we wish we would have just brought a little backpack with us because we had to lug our suitcases with us. The reason we didn't bring a backpack is just because we were worried about leaving it at the hotel and we kind of just wanted our stuff with us. However, looking back, I wish we would have just brought a little backpack. Getting on this little boat was pretty sketchy because they had these really steep stairs. They were very slippery, and we only had one hand available to like grab onto something because our other hand had our luggage in it. We got on the boat, and this felt like the initial start of our tour. This boat was a private boat just for our little group of 16 people. And so it was just us in that boat. So we really got to know each other, and we each had our own room in the cabin. Even the solo travelers got their own room as well. And so it was pretty comfortable. Of course, we had our own private crew with us on this private boat, and they cooked dinner. All of the meals on the boat were included except for drinks. So this included juice, alcohol, Coke products. If you got any drinks, that cost extra, but of course they were pretty cheap, so it was fine. Our boat wasn't the nicest that we saw, but it was comfortable, it was clean, and I love that it was private. This was the start of the nonstop activities, which we weren't really super prepared for it to be this crazy. Right after we got in the boat, we had lunch. And after we had lunch, it was time to go back on the little boat to start exploring the little islands. So they had optional activities when you were on the boat. They had kayaking and there's also swimming. So you didn't have to do this, but people opted to do it. And it was like $10 for kayaking. So after all the activities, we had dinner on the boat. And afterwards, it was time to have a karaoke party. Halong Bay was beautiful. After this first part, we thought the tour was absolutely worth it. So the start of day 3, we woke up super early on the boat and we got on the little mini boat to take us to an island called T-Top. Once we were on T-Top, we hiked to the very top and we had an amazing view of Halong Bay. And you guys be prepared. To the top, there was 450 stairs and they were quite steep. So be prepared because it is pretty hard, but absolutely worth it. Once we got back from T-Top, we showered and then we had lunch before we got back on the boat to go to the bus. So again, it was another 4-hour drive. We had one little stop in between to have a bathroom break or get a snack. We went back to our original hotel to drop off our bags. So about 30 minutes after that, we had a local guide come and pick us up at our hotel to go on our food tour. So this was optional. It was about $25 each. Some people opted to not go on the food tour. However, most of us did go on the food tour. The food tour included banh mi, fried pancakes, bun cha, sticky rice with ice cream, and it ended with egg coffee. Our food tour ran a little bit late, so we had to end up running to our hotel, getting our bags so we could go on our overnight train. For the overnight train, there was 4 people to a cabin, and our CEO had messaged us about a couple hours before letting us know who our cabin mates were, so we knew once we got there. Initially going into this, we were a little bit worried about going on a sleeper train just because we had never experienced it before. However, I would say it's better than I expected. The beds were clean. It felt clean in the little cabins that we were in. However, the bathroom situation wasn't great. But I mean, we were kind of expecting that. So just be prepared for the bathroom situation to be a little bit dirty. Our train went from Hanoi to Hue, and it was about 14 to 16 hours. There were some snacks and water included for every person on there. However, they did have a food cart that would go around and you could buy food. They also had a little cafe cart, which I don't know about the food there. You could get beers there. They had some things there, but I probably wouldn't recommend eating dinner there. Just eat dinner before you get on. These little cabins were pretty small. Me and Javi opted to go on the top bunks. They were pretty small. Like, I'm 5'3", I fit probably perfectly in there. However, my husband is 5'10", and he was a little too big for the bed. It was a bit rickety, so it wasn't the best night's sleep, but we managed and it ended up working out fine. That wraps up day 3, sleeping on the train. Day 4 was our arrival in Hue from the overnight train. Once we got off the overnight train, there was a bus waiting for us to take us to the Asia Hotel. Once we got to the hotel, unfortunately we couldn't check in, so we had to drop our stuff off and go out for the day. There was an optional activity as soon as we got there, which was a vegan brunch in a pagoda. The pagoda was called Hoi An Pagoda. The bus that took us from the train station to the hotel also took us to the pagoda to have brunch. Most opted to go to the vegan brunch. However, some opted to stay and do breakfast on their own. Brunch was about $12 each, and it was just traditional food from Hue. So we got to try a lot of traditional food, and it was delicious. It was probably one of my favorite meals that we had in Vietnam. So if you're thinking about doing it, I would highly recommend it. Right after brunch, we went back to our hotel and picked up the rest of the group that opted to not go to the brunch. and we made our way to have a included tour of Hue. So included on this tour was the Hue Citadel, Chu Tien Mu Pagoda, and the Mausoleum of the Emperor. So yes, there was a lot of things we were doing this day. This day there was also an optional motorbike tour, and they were supposed to go through the villages. However, it was pouring rain this day, so the people on the motorbikes just followed the bus to all of the locations we were going to. The motorbike tour cost about $30 each. If you wanted to, you could stay on the bus, and that was included. And we opted to just stay on the bus because we didn't want to get soaked. And after the tour, finally, we were able to check into the Asia Hotel. This hotel was definitely a step up from the Chalcedony Hotel, I thought. It felt slightly cleaner, and they also had a really good breakfast. After we checked into our hotel, we had a little bit of time to shower and get ready because we felt disgusting from the train. And our CEO had recommended a restaurant to go together, and it was called Madame Tu's, and it was delicious. We got to try some local food and definitely recommend. I want to preface this also by saying meals weren't included. Usually it was just breakfast that was included. So we were paying ourselves for basically all dinners and all lunches. Another thing when you're in Hue, you definitely have to try the salted coffee and the coconut coffee. They were absolutely delicious, and I still think about it to this day. Because it was New Year's Day this day, we went to a rooftop bar and we celebrated the New Year's. Day 5 is traveling from Hue to Hoi An. It was another 4-hour drive, and usually you take a scenic route to get there. However, again, it was raining, so we just went on the freeway, took the fastest way there. Our first stop was a place called Lapan, where we had a delicious lunch. We had lunch at a rooftop cafe with a great view of the lakes and the mountains behind it. We arrived in Hoi An at about 3 p.m. and we checked into the TTC Hotel. This hotel was definitely our favorite of the trip. It was a villa-style hotel, and everybody had their own rooms, and we all had a balcony looking out to the pool. We felt like this was definitely the cleanest hotel that we had, so I think that's partly why it was our favorite hotel. And their breakfast was delicious. After check-in, we had an orientation walk that took about an hour in Hoi An. We purchased our Hoi An Town Pass, which was about $5 each. It includes an entrance into many of the places in Hoi An. We went to the Princess Temple and the Chuakao Bridge, which is that Japanese bridge you see in all the pictures. And we ended the walk by the Tubon River. Our CEO recommended a place to go get tailoring done if you wanted to in Hoi An. And during this free time, we went to the tailor. I showed them a picture of what I wanted. I already kind of had an idea and basically just picked out my fabric. They did measurements, and it was super easy. It probably took about 30 minutes to do that. The next day around the same time, which is about 5 p.m., I just had a fitting, which again took about like 20 minutes. I had the pants the next day. It took about 48 hours to get my pants. Later this night, we had the Lantern Boat Tour. And of course, this is one of the most touristy things you can do there. Thankfully, our CEO had already planned everything for us, and we saw a lot of people trying to haggle getting on these boats. But because our CEO figured out ahead of time, all we had to do was wait in line and basically just get on a boat. It was super simple. Yes, it is very touristy, but I definitely recommend doing this. It was one of my favorite things we did in Hoi An. After the boat tour, we all opted to have dinner together. So we went to a restaurant and had dinner together, and then afterwards we just walked around and shopped some more. And that was the end of day 5. Day 6 had 1 included activity and 2 optional activities. So this morning we opted in for the optional buggy tour, and this went to many different places. It costed about $35 each, but it lasted about 4 hours. The first stop was Mr. Tu's tofu pudding, where he showed you how he made his traditional tofu, and we got to try some of it. It was interesting. And the second place was the Hoi An herb farm, where we learned how they farm in Vietnam and where most of the produce comes from. After that, we went on the spinning boats, which I'm sure you guys have seen videos of. They spin you around and they dance with you, and honestly, it was a lot of fun. It was a bit chaotic, but it was definitely a lot of fun. We ended that with a boat ride on the Tubon River, which took us back to our hotel area, and of course, we had to sing some karaoke. Basically, everywhere you go in Vietnam, they want you to do karaoke. So just have a few songs that you are prepared to sing. The local tour guide in this area was one of my favorites. He was very sweet and he was very knowledgeable about the area. This is a situation where the tipping kitty definitely comes in handy because our CEO tipped the local driver, the bus driver, the boat driver, and basically we don't have to worry about tipping. He just took care of it. After this tour, we went on another tour, which was eating lunch and making noodles at this place called Oodles of Noodles. This is a G Adventures partner, so a community project that they have going on in Hoi An. They house and employ at-risk youth in the communities and basically give them a chance to start a career. And this is one of my favorite things about G Adventures that they do. They have a lot of partners like this, and you get to have a lot of fun interacting with people in the community. After Oodles of Noodles, we had free time. We opted for massages, which was only $8 US for an hour. And I also had a manicure and a pedicure, which cost about $20 with tip. There was an optional activity that evening, which is a Hoi An memory show, and it cost about $30 per person. We opted not to go. And that was the end of day 6. Day 7 was a free day in Hoi An. This was really our first time to take a break because we've been going non-stop until this point. There were a few optional tours this day, so there was the Misan and also a cooking class. For these optional tours, you don't have to worry about deciding that you want to do them before the tour starts. You can just tell the CEO the day before the tour or the day of the tour that you want to go, and he'll sign you up. Every day, he'll give you a list of the optional tours for the next day, and you can just sign up there, and then the day of the tour is when you pay them. This free day, we opted to just take our time and walk around ourselves. Because this was our first free day, we decided to just take it easy and just walk around the city. And that was the end of day 7. Day 8 was our flight from Hoi An to Ho Chi Minh City. We had to leave the hotel at 6:15 a.m., so it was a really early start. And our flight was at 9 a.m. The bus ride to the airport was about 30 minutes, and they gave us a breakfast to-go box. And just be forewarned, the to-go boxes aren't great that we had. They always had a boiled egg and just a piece of bread, not even toasted, just a piece of bread. So it wasn't great. After this day, because we didn't want another to-go breakfast, we just made sure we had some snacks on us at all times, just in case of instances like this. The flight to Ho Chi Minh City was about an hour and a half, so we landed around 10:30 a.m. We flew Vietnam Airlines. They had a really good baggage allowance, so you could do one checked bag for 50 pounds and a 25-pound carry-on. From the airport, we got picked up by a bus and we were taken to the Amory Hotel. Once again, we couldn't check into our hotel, so we had to just drop our bags off and head out for the day. Once we got to the hotel, there was an optional tour. This was $25 per person. There was a tour to the Reunification Palace, as well as a Cyclo tour. Combined, the tour was about 3 hours. The Cyclo tour took us to Notre Dame, the post office, which kind of looked like a train station, the Thi Quan Duc Memorial, I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's where the monk burned himself in the street, which is a very popular tourist spot. They also took us to a secret VC bunker, and this was where there was a whole underground where they kept the weapons for the Vietnam War. We also went to an apartment complex just to see how the locals lived in this area. And we also got some sugarcane juice from the locals, and 10 out of 10 recommend. This night, everyone kind of did their own thing for dinner. We went with some of our friends from the group, and we tried a place called Pho Quin, basically just Vietnamese pho. It was delicious. It was right on the corner of a busy street, and it was a lot of fun. For the Amory Hotel, it was probably one of our least favorite hotels. I would just say because of the cleanliness, it didn't feel too clean. There were a few bugs in our hotel room, which, I mean, you kind of expect. But the breakfast was also not very good. It's probably our least favorite breakfast. For this area, we kind of just opted to do our own thing for breakfast, and it ended up working out okay. But the location was great. And this concludes day 8. Day 9 was the end of our classic Vietnam tour. So this was the day we went to Cu Chi Tunnels. We went to Cu Chi Tunnels at around 9 a.m. and we ended up being there kind of all day. So we didn't have lunch planned that day. The CEO just told us to bring some snacks with us. There's also some snacks you can buy there. So you can also plan on that if you want. It's annoying how long it takes to get to Cu Chi tunnels and back, just because the traffic getting there is really bad. So kind of just be prepared for that. Cu Chi tunnels is an included activity, and it was probably one of my favorite things we did. It was very cool going there, and it was kind of surreal. And going through the tunnels was absolutely insane. It was a lot smaller than I was expecting, but it was a lot of fun. There was also a place where you could shoot AK-47s if that is what you want to do. We had some people in our group doing it, and they said it was a lot of fun. So if you want to do that, if that's your thing, go for it. There's a lot of cool things to see in this area. On the way back from Cu Chi tunnels, you could stop at the War Remnants Museum if you wanted to, or you could go back to the hotel. Us and a few friends from our group decided to go to the War Remnants Museum, and we stayed there for about an hour and a half. It was pretty busy, but I would give yourself at least an hour to walk through. The last part of this day was a farewell dinner with the people who were leaving. It was also a welcome dinner for those coming in to the next part of our trip. So we had 4 people leaving from our Vietnam trip, and we also had 4 more coming for our Cambodia trip. So we had the same amount of people for both trips. This night, because it was our last night with our Vietnam group members that were leaving, we went to a night out on the town, we hit some bars, and we said farewell to those people. By this point, we were super close with our group members, so it was really sad saying goodbye to them. And if you're worried about not getting close to your group members, I can assure you, you will. You experience a lot of things together and go through a lot of things, so don't worry about that. I'm sure you will make friends. So at the end of day 9, this was the end of our classic Vietnam, Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh tour. However, we were continuing on with the Cambodia classic experience, and we will have another video talking about our experience going through Cambodia and ending in Bangkok. Let us know if you have any questions. Hopefully this gives you some idea of what to expect on your tour. If you're interested, we also have some shorts going over our tour and videos of what it was like. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.